right, Sunday, welcome in. We appreciate you hanging with us as always. I see the chat is already buzzing. The number count is there. So first and foremost, thank you. You can do a lot of things with your Sunday. In some cases, you have to do a lot of things with your Sunday. So we appreciate you taking some time and stepping away to make some money here. And I'm not going to do it. That's Terry McBride in the house there. Jordan is producing. Somehow, Jordan is back with us. We thought he escaped, Terry. We thought that he got away from this early morning shit show that is myself and Lindquist that just goes all over the place. He's always miserable about something. You are the opposite. You're always happy about something. So we thought Jordan just had enough. Talked to management. It was just like, all right, I'm out of here. I can't do this Sunday morning crap anymore. And here he is again. And
just
here you are.
I thought I was out.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, here I am on Sunday. I'm picking up, I think the rest of the season I'll be here for Sunday mornings. So that should be fun. I think that was what I heard.
Well, that's a major announcement here.
I think so. Yeah. I don't call it an announcement yet. This might be just me misremembering a conversation with Chris, but I think that was what he asked me if I could do. So hopefully I'll be around. Wow. I love doing these shows, and it's a lot of fun.
Can I just jump in real quick if I may here? Because it's hard for it to be anybody else. Jordan, we can't even blame, because I just mentioned to you, Terry, that he was gone basically the past month worth of shows.
Right,
so
well, that's it. I'm glad he's
got
back.
so bad between myself and Eric Lindquist. It got so awkward. It got so heated. It just got such a strenuous activity for him to show up that he asked out, that he said, that's it. I need a new partner.
You're right. Now I am remembering that conversation with Chris where he said Eric hates you and he can't do shows with you anymore.
Yes.
That's totally right. Yep.
Let's just be honest with the people. That's all.
You guys are great together. I enjoy. That's always a good watch. I think you guys
it gets
fun
crazy.
Chemistry, and I really enjoy watching the people in the chat not get it. Actually, it's just so much fun.
Well, it's
why does he hate Eric? It's so mean. It's like
no. I think it's my Andy Kaufman moment of the week. I love it. Like, we can create this awkward theater,
right?
That and like, speaking of the word, literally in this case, like, you and I could talk theater, we could talk movies, we could talk depths of it.
Andy Kaufman.
Exactly. All right, my friend. So let's look at this across the board here. First off, we always appreciate you on show. You can see the chat is already buzzing that you're here, man. Looking at Sunday, now that you're going to be here on Sundays, is there anything specific to today, or maybe in general, that you apply to the Sunday slate that maybe is different even on the weekend that we've seen?
I mean, for one, if you're not doing a show, make sure that you get up on time to get your lineups in. The slates start a little bit earlier. We were talking about that in Discord earlier. Somebody was saying, hey, I love having this early info. Well, the slate starts 5.5 hours earlier than yesterday. So it's important to get the info. But yeah, usually we've got all the lineups, which we've got, I think, everybody but the Twins now. So we've kind of got a lot of information to work with. You usually get a little bit of time to work with your lineups. So it's a good day to build lineups. You get a lot. It's obviously, all afternoon games. So you get some weather considerations where the heat's going to play a factor. Some of the games that are a little further west start a little bit earlier than you might be accustomed to. So it always makes for interesting slates. Today in particular, I think it's pretty stark in terms of the pitching. It's going to be a really interesting pitching slate. Up at the top, there's a couple really premium options, but they're getting really, really high ownership. And then I think there's some good options that are getting slept on. So I'm excited to talk it through. It should be a good one.
All right, let's jump in. And if you're hanging with us, you haven't hit the thumbs up button and you haven't hit the subscribe button to what we're doing, shame on you. Come on. We're going to tell you multiple times over, because and we always tell people, we bring people behind the curtain. There is a tally count going on. So you and I don't want to be left in the dust for any activation codes, especially with people like Ehrenberg and Engelman bragging every single time they top the list. So don't worry, we're going to get you in here on Stokastic, half off, all the things that you know and have been seeing. But let's jump into at least the first game. And in Baltimore, Baltimore, Bryce Wilson is as bad as advertised. He's going to be right there at the bottom as far as our projections, what Alex has. On the other side, though, and this is where I think it can get, granted, can is the operative word here for a P2. In Spencer Watkins, matchup cost, numbers on the surface are not great, but he's on a nice little stretch, at least for Spencer Watkins, on a nice little stretch. So I imagine you're redlining Bryce Wilson, maybe not. And then the other side of it would be what to do with Spencer Watkins.
Yeah, I think there are probably better spots to move around the board. I mean, I do really like that price. And it is a great matchup. The Pirates are a team I've been targeting through most of the year. Even when they've made their little additions, it really hasn't made that much of a difference. It's just, we're talking about Watkins, 14.5% strikeout rate over 64 innings and 14 starts.
Yeah, it's not great.
4.92 xFIP. There's not a ton to believe in there. I wouldn't be totally shocked if he comes out, puts up a serviceable enough start. I just think there's enough guys within, let's say, 1,000 of them in terms of salary where you can probably get there. And they're much more likely to exceed what he's going to give you in that mid-range. And there's a few of them. So the idea that he's going to beat out all of them, I think we're asking him to do a lot with that. He would be the guy out of these two that I would definitely go to.
Right.
I'm not saying it's crazy. Again, really, really bad lineup on the other side, but I probably would be looking other directions.
Yeah, crazy would be like you'd leave the show if I had that same lead in for a guy like Bryce Wilson. You'd be like, that's it. There's nothing I can do to save you, Shander. I'm going to cut my losses.
Yeah, I don't really see very much reason to play Wilson on the other side. Even if you just want to boil it down to just going up against a better lineup in the Orioles here. So I don't really see any reason to go to him. Between the two, gun to my head, I would take the Watkins side of it, even though the numbers are very similar. I mean, it's not like we're talking about a much more talented guy.
Baltimore, good team total projection, at least over 5 runs, 5.3. They're right there as far as the meat. And look, Boston against Brad Keller is going to be the top projected stack by a decent, probably by about 2 percentage points right now. So you have, when I say meat, I'm looking at Philadelphia, Tampa, Toronto, and there's Baltimore in that mix. And a lot of it is taking advantage clearly of Bryce Wilson. Unfortunately, though, Terry, you don't have any leverage. You're losing leverage to the field getting to Baltimore.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a much better lineup than the one on the other side, but it's still not one of the premium lineups of the day. And they project out well because of the matchup with Bryce Wilson here. But if they're going to be that popular, and we're talking about 22% for Cedric Mullins up top on FanDuel, 20% on DK, a couple guys in the teens, a couple guys in the 10 to 12% range, I like to get to this team when they're sneaky. I don't know that I want to get to them when they're the chalk. I'll have some. They'll work their way in around the edges. I'll have some 3-mans. I might have some of these guys as one-offs. So I do think it's a good spot. I do see a path to success. It's well within the range of outcomes here, but it's not one of the premium teams in terms of their overall talent, their overall production for the year. In my power index, they sit, what is that, 6th? Looks like 6th overall. So, I mean, middle of the road kind of a team. I'm happy to get them, but a little bit under where the field is. Premium bats, in addition to Mullins, I want some Adley Rutschman. I want some Anthony Santander, some Mountcastle, even some Jorge Mateo. I mention him pretty much every time we talk through this team. Not a good hitter, terrible on base percentage, but can give you a little bit of pop, can give you some sneaky, he can give you some speed, 26 stolen bases, and some sneaky power, 10 home runs on the year from him. So it's an interesting player. He's hitting 7th today. Outside of that, I don't really love it, but you can weave in and out of this lineup if you want. But under the field.
It's a total of 9. So it's not like and as expected with these two guys here, is there any way, and you're not losing as much leverage by any means, it's going to be a cheap option for you to get to Pittsburgh, but can you sub-stack down to even one-offs here to save some money elsewhere?
On the Pirate side of things?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can. I mean, we're talking about Spencer Watkins. It's not like it's not like it's a good pitcher on the other side. It's just the guys that I would want to are drawing similar ownership to some of these Orioles, and there's fewer guys that I would want to play in that Pirates lineup, particularly this configuration of it. So Brian Reynolds, great player, only 2,900. That's a misprice on the FanDuel slate, only 4,000 on DK, but he's drawing a ton of ownership. I don't believe too much in Ben Gamel, but I do believe in Cabrian Hayes. He's a little bit popular, around 10%, fairly cheap. He's playable. O'Neill Cruz is playable. Cruz, premium prospect, but has not really delivered in terms of the overall run production we've expected. He has hit 9 home runs in his 154 plate appearances. That's good, but he's 10% below average creating runs, and just up and down. There's just not a lot of good run creation in this lineup. There's not a lot of support for the good players like Reynolds. So, the idea, you maybe pick off a solo home run, but the idea of getting a big performance out of even a 3-man from this team it's asking a lot, but they are against a bad pitcher, so you can get there.
All right, heaviest dog on the board in Philadelphia here is Washington, stripped down. We know that. By the way, Kobe has found me out. So I just want to give some props out here to Kobe on the chat, Terry, because as I was slandering Lindquist for bailing on this program, requesting a change of partner, like you see in the cop shows, right? Like, I can't take it anymore, Captain, right? Doing that, I strategically was holding my child. It's like the old thing, you never hit a man with glasses that you see in the old movies, right? So my thought process was I'd be as close to bulletproof as possible if I'm holding my child destroying Lindquist.
That's it. Win as much sympathy as you can when you're throwing somebody else under the bus. Absolutely.
Exactly. Right. Now, do you remember?
No.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say in that relationship where Eric's going in and talking to the captain and asking for a new partner, are you the Riggs? You're the loose cannon, or are you the Murtaugh? You're like the straight man. He's the loose cannon, and he doesn't want to be with like a straight man. Like, what's the relationship? Which one are you? Are you Riggs or Murtaugh?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think there's a Murtaugh. I think
two Riggses.
I think we got a pair of Riggses, and that's why we don't get along. Right?
There we go.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan was Murtaugh, and he's like, I'm too old for this shit, and he got out of here.
He punched
That's really
out.
what it came down to.
There you go.
All right, man. Now, do you remember this scene from Bean Dude referencing Meet the Fockers, the rubber boob? I don't remember that.
Vaguely. That one I've only seen once or twice.
Meet the Fockers is the second
it's not
one.
even on that much. So it's not like even a 2 a.m. cable special. It's just not on that much. But okay. I have a vague recollection. De Niro putting on the fake boob. Pretty sure.
I got it.
De Niro will do anything for a paycheck. He would do this show for a paycheck.
There you go. And look, Dirty Mike, don't blame my child if Nick Senzel doesn't pan out. All right. That's all I'm saying. If you were getting telepathic messages from Teddy to play Senzel and it doesn't work, I can't tell you. Don't blame me. All right, let's go to Philadelphia here. Washington in town. And you mentioned at the start of the show, as far as a couple of obvious targets from a pitching standpoint. However, they're catching a ton of ownership. And the only guy catching more ownership than Nola is Corbin Burns going up against Cincinnati. I mean, look, it's going to be hard, I think, for Nola to screw this one up. But you've got 10K, you've got the rest of the field, and you're dealing with a significantly low, the worst leverage score on the board.
Yeah. So are you talking about the Phillies bat side of that or the Nola side?
No, Nola. I'm sorry. Starting with Nola. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. I was trying to upload some stuff there.
No. That's fine.
Up the question there, and I lost track of which one we were talking first. So yeah, the Nola side of thing. I mean, the only thing we're wrestling with Nola and Corbin Burns here is the popularity, and they're both drawing massive popularity. So if you're comfortable rostering that much of the field, and we talk about it a lot, pitching is a lot more predictable. It's a lot more steady, and you can get to some of the chalk of pitching and then differentiate with bats depending on how many lineups you're building. But there are, like I said at the top of the show, there's just some good pitchers who are lower priced, who are in similarly good matchups or even better matchups, and they're not drawing any ownership. So depends on how you want to play your slate, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with going to Aaron Nola here. 10,000 on DK is a good price. 10.8 on FanDuel. I'm fine with that. 32% owned on FanDuel. Throughout the year, I've talked about it. Usually I come in at the most like 20-25% on pitchers, although I got carried away with Carlos Rodon yesterday and that didn't work out in my favor. So that might even temper my expectations on what I get to with a Nola, with a Corbin Burns in terms of ownership here. I would look to be a little bit below that, maybe 20%, something like that. Let the field have some additional shares and spread out to the Giolitos, the Lusardos, the Drew Rasmussens, some of these other guys on the slate, Frankie Montas, even. So I do think there are spots, but 28.2% strikeout rate, 2.98 xFIP for Nola. There's absolutely nothing to argue with going up against this weekend Nationals lineup.
20%, you said you're going to cap it about as far as ownership for Nola?
On the FanDuel side, 20-ish% versus the 32% that he's getting owned. Yeah, I think he's fair. And we're only working with 100. Yeah, DK, he's 60-ish%. So, I mean, if I'm coming in 40, 50, I'm fine with that. On both, I would look to, you have to take some shares. If you're going to grab some Luzardo and some of those other guys, you do have to take those shares from somewhere, right? So I think that it makes some sense to just go a little bit under on both Burns and Nola while considering them the top two overall options.
Well, you read my mind, because I know we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about Burns, but just with him in the backdrop, especially as a good comparison to the other guy who's getting a shit ton of ownership on this slate, Terry, what is your number you're looking at on DK? Similar, as you mentioned, with Nola, as far as capping it on Burns, because those are really going to be the two guys well over 50% projected ownership that you're going to have to work a hard cap on.
Yeah, they project within a couple of points for me. I would be mixing, matching them, based on salary. Burns 300 more on the DK slate, solid 500 more on the FanDuel slate. Okay. So you can get to a little bit more with Nola in terms of the bats, but they're very, very similar with what you can build on both sites and how they work on both sites. And they're both similarly popular. So yeah, I would be looking to get to a lot of both of them, have a lot of different combinations with both of them where I'm putting together different teams, different bats, different lower owned, positively leveraged stacks from like the middle of the board with these guys where you can afford the bats, and just get to a good spread of those combinations. Make sure you're not putting them together with the exact same high owned value pitcher. And we don't have anybody really who's like the carried away with type value pitcher today. So that's a little bit less of a concern. But yeah, I would look to slightly undercut the field on both of these guys so that I have a few shares to spread around to the other guys that I like.
Yeah. Corey Abbott is I don't know how long he's going to be in. And at the same time, while you're dealing with a lot of positive leverage, at least for where he's projected, a couple of other guys who are noticeably and rightfully so at the bottom of that list, the Phillies bats have just been so hot. I don't know if it's worth taking that risk with a guy in Corey Abbott.
Yeah, I don't see him lasting all that long here. Phillies are smashing through the top of my home run model today. They project out really well. So I'm going to have a ton of Phillies bats. I'm not going to have any shares of Corey Abbott. I wouldn't do it on DK where he's 6,000. Certainly wouldn't do it on FanDuel for 66. No reason to go there. Big time target. I know he had one good start. He made a few days ago where he pitched like through 5 clean innings or something like that. But kid he's a 26-year-old pitching in AAA. Last year in AAA, he had a 4.58% home run rate. He's just not a good pitcher. He's a quad A type guy. So you can throw Philly bats at him all day.
All right, so that's now where we are. The Phillies stack is going to be losing leverage because of how hot they've been, because it's Corey Abbott. So that combination, although, I mean, Alex has him right below Boston, tied, if you will, with Tampa. That's my last projection here. I'll run the latest on DK. So rightfully so, they're projected to be right there at the top. But here's the interesting part is you do have Boston against Brad Keller, and we do have Baltimore, as we just mentioned, against Bryce Wilson. So it's not like Philadelphia is getting 35% ownership, dominating like we've seen Aaron Nola. So there is, I would imagine, a pretty easier way maybe to work around this stack, even as a main stack, not just having to sub-stack it.
Yeah, I think you can work around this in a lot of different ways. It's a big enough slate where there's some lower owned teams. There's some, like I've said a couple times, there's some lower owned pitching too that you can get to and combine them with. But I think just, you poke around the board and they're technically negatively leveraged as well. But like the White Sox, they're going against Spencer Howard. They're actually surprisingly low on the board here. They rate out a lot better for me. They're second overall in my home run model. So I was getting to a decent amount of White Sox. Yep. And the White Sox and the Phillies fit together like really, really well, leave you a ton of money. Both teams are pretty cheap on both sites. You can go to like Phillies and Yankees, just depending on they fit together well. When I say that, I mean like positionally, where you get the premium bats. Those two teams just fit together with the Phillies quite nicely. And they're somewhat low owned. So I think there are ways to put them together with those two teams and then obviously a bunch of others and just mix and match your way to it. There's also just some low owned bats in the middle of this lineup. Like people don't think that much of Alec Boehm, Derek Hall. They're only really going to Kyle Schwarber, Rhys Hoskins, and Nicky Castellanos. Everybody else, Bowman Hall, 10% on DK. Everybody else, single digits. Yep. On the FanDuel slate, 12 and 14 for Bowman Hall. Everybody else single digits outside of the 3 guys. So those 3 are drawing, Schwarber 33% on FanDuel, mid-20s for Hoskins and Castellanos. There's a lot of popularity on those guys, but if you're mix and matching them with a couple other bats or some lower on stacks, it's easy enough to get there, and they just look great to me. So I'm definitely going to have a lot of Phillies today.
Are you able to, I mean, my goodness, it would be the risk, right? Maybe the second greatest risk if you want to add in Cincinnati here. But if you were getting to your number there with Nola, and just a small percentage. I mean, and again, 1.1 is what they're getting here. So if you wanted to turn around and scum dacker a small shred of Washington in the hopes that if maybe that worked out, I mean, you'd pretty much knock out 2/3 of the field with at least Aaron Nola, knowing you would probably knock out 40% of your own lineups.
Yeah, that's it. how many shares am I willing to risk with doing that? It's just a lineup that I don't have much respect for at this point. There's not much left there. So everybody knows I don't like Luke Voit, and he would be like one of the bats that people would be targeting and saying like, hey, yeah, let's at least we get Luke Voit and Nelson Cruz. And Nelson Cruz hasn't really been Nelson Cruz anymore, and Luke Voit was never very good. So I don't really know what there is to go to there. A couple insurance stacks, a couple hedge stacks against a big share of Nola is fine if you want to do it, but Nola's very good. I don't like doing that against the excellent apex pitchers, and Nola's on that list. And I particularly don't like doing it. Like if it was the Yankees on the other side at this ownership, then we've got a bigger discussion. With this team, I don't really need to do it.
Okay.
And if it burns me, it burns me. It's one of those spots. Yes, we might see like, a guy like Sean V who plays all the Sean V. I meant to say Sean John from the site, and I said Sean V. Sean from the site plays a lot of the super low owned, super contrarian stuff, and he could be targeting that. If it comes through, those are the days where you see a guy like that rocket to the top of standings, and it's one approach to these slates. But it's just not my preferred approach. And as an insurance, I just don't see the need to do it for people that are only making a few lineups. I wouldn't push it.
I took Nola, and I'm building here a 5 legs. I'm going to build here for you throughout the show. It's already locked in, so you can rip away if you don't like it. But it's I put them in a round robin. That's neither here nor there. But Nola, they're all performance doubles. So I'm targeting Ks and the team to win. First one was Nola 6 Ks, Phillies to win, -150 as my anchor in this. You're okay with that?
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any issue with that. I can give you my strikeout projection, but given how the Phillies look, we're over on that strikeout projection. Okay. And with how the Phillies look here, I like that one a lot.
Okay, fine. Now the next one is in Detroit, and that's where we'll go. Well, I'll throw that in at the end, but let's start with Rasmussen, who has been popping up. And if you're looking at Odd Shopper, of course, that's where you should be starting for any type of betting, especially with player props that we have across the board. This was a guy, strikeout props was actually popping a little bit on the over, at least earlier today. But let's look at this as far as, I don't know how much you look at revenge. I don't know how much at just bouncing back. Definitely a disappointment last night for Tampa against Detroit. Drew Rasmussen. And then on the other side, you've got Matt Manning, which, is not going to get much. Rasmussen isn't getting much. Manning is getting nothing. That's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, and probably appropriate for Manning to be getting nothing there. 9.6% strikeout rate in his 13 innings, 14.8% over 85 and a third last year. Not really a guy I'm going to against a decent Rays lineup here. Rasmussen, I think, is very interesting. 8,200 on FanDuel, only pulling 1.4% ownership, 7,400 on DK, only 10% ownership over there. The Tigers with a righty on the mound has been one of the more targetable spots for strikeouts, for minimization of run scoring all year long. 30th ranked 110 ISO against righties, a 30th ranked 71 WRC plus, a 30th ranked 1.89% home run rate against righties. There are only 30 teams in baseball. Those are all dead last. 24% strikeout rate. I think it's a targetable spot for Rasmussen. He's not like a premium ace, but 19.9% strikeout rate this year, a 3.78 xFIP, 23.8% strikeout rate last year. So we know he's got a little bit more in the tank in terms of strikeouts. I like it a lot. This might be a spot where maybe you could say I'll grab a couple of insurance stacks on the other side, because it's not a Aaron Nola type guy on the mound, but it's a bad offense on the other side. So just based on the matchup, I really like it. Based on the price, the ownership, it really makes me want to grab some additional shares here. So I'm big on the Rasmussen side.
Yeah, and King of Smack echoing, what you've mentioned here, just Tampa, Detroit fade game, hard park to hit, and you're not going to find that much. And it's not helping Matt Manning's case by any means, but it definitely will help Rasmussen.
Yeah. Just anytime you can throw a park factor on top of a decent pitcher going up against a bad lineup, that just makes it look a little bit better. So yeah, absolutely, that makes a lot of sense.
So going to the stack side of this here, just bypassing Manning clearly, just because Tampa is that other stack we mentioned just below Boston with Philadelphia, and unlike Philadelphia, even though it's cheaper, or I guess top to bottom at least, you're actually gaining some leverage here. So what's the argument against Tampa Bay based on where they're projected second highest stack tie with Philadelphia? The cost is not burning you by any means compared to the other three teams. And on top of that, even Boston, you're getting a shade of negative leverage.
Yeah, I don't mind that spot at all. The one downside of it, the best bat in that lineup, Brandon Lau, is pulling a ton of ownership. 5,200 on DK. He's still pulling 20% popularity. He's only 3,100 on the FanDuel slate. He's pushing 30% popularity over there. Excellent chance to hit a home run on any given slate. Great bat there. But a lot of these other guys, everybody else in the lineup on DK below 10%. Only Randy Arozarena drawing 10% on FanDuel. Everybody else below. So there's some decent power bats. They project out decently well. They're not expensive. So if they're positively leveraged, that's an interesting spot to me. On top of Lau, who you can roster in combination with his teammates when they're this low owned. Rosarena obviously is a good one. G-Man Choi. Isaac Paredes is a guy that people have been sleeping on a lot through the season. 14 home runs at this point and 232 plate appearances at 251 ISO, 119 WRC plus. This is the guy they brought over in the Meadows trade. There was a reason they liked him. And you take advantage of a bad team like the Tigers and you see something in a kid like this and they pounced, and they're getting a lot of production out of him. So I think he's interesting. Jose Siri, maybe a little bit sneaky for the dead minimum on DK, 6.9% owned. Maybe it's not completely sneaky, but that's not exactly popular. Hitting eighth, there's some power, there's some speed there. So he's kind of interesting. Hasn't really come through in terms of the hit tool or the on base skills at all, or the run creation, but there is, some ability to point to, hey, there is a little bit of dinger upside. And if he gets on, maybe you're getting a stolen base here. So it's an interesting lineup from top to bottom. Yeah.
And look, Detroit did put up a bunch last night, and Rasmussen is not, here we go. See, it was only a matter of time. And Rasmussen is not, Frankie Montas, Adam Wainwright, even, Corbin Burns, Aaron Nola. So Detroit has leverage. And while they're projected as a low stack, there's an opportunity at least to get to them. And you have some recent history as far as last night.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lineup that we've seen come through from time to time. This year, a lot less frequently than last year. They were a good team down the second half of last year, and really for most of last year. But this year, you have in this starting lineup, there's one guy who's created runs better than average, and that's Harold Castro, the cleanup hitter, with a 105 WRC plus and 270 plate appearances. Everyone else in this lineup is not only below average, they're more than 10% below average creating runs. Riley Green is the second highest guy by WRC plus with an 89. Javi Baez has an 81. Those are terrible run creation numbers. There are two guys in this lineup who have 10 home runs, exactly 10 home runs, Javi Baez and Heimer Candelario. There's just not a lot of power. There's not a lot of sequential hitting. There's not much to like here. From time to time, you can catch lightning in a bottle. I don't love the matchup for them, but like I said, when we were talking about the Rasmussen side, I think if I'm requiring myself to draw two insurance stacks against every pitcher that I roster a lot of, I might be more inclined to do it with the Tigers than I'd be more happy about doing it with the Tigers, I think, than the Nationals, even though that Nationals lineup by the numbers is actually a little bit better.
Right.
There's just guys in this lineup that I think should be better, I guess is the way that I'm saying it.
Got it. By the way, that second leg for me was Rasmussen 4+ and Tampa to win. And I actually got that at plus money, which I was pretty surprised at.
Wow. I've got that clearing by a lot on the strikeouts, and I love the win side of it. So
that was my favorite. I couldn't believe that. I was just going through a couple of the player performance earlier, and I was like, wait a second, I think it was at plus 130 when we got it. Nice. Okay. So we move on, and I appreciate all the patience. By any means, Teddy is gone. All right. Teddy's hanging with his mama. So thank you all for not only being paid. I was dying. Some of these comments were freaking hilarious here. So no, this wasn't for personal gain. Otherwise I would have kept Teddy throughout the show. If you'd like, hit the thumbs up button. Supposed to be collecting
likes for us at least.
Yeah. I mean, look, we can get to 200, I think, just for having Teddy here. I would hope, my goodness, but really appreciate all your patience. And look, let's
we weren't even talking. It wasn't even on the show that we were talking about his wingspan and all that. We were doing all that pregame. We had the tape measurements and everything. It was we heard the whole scouting breakdown on Ted.
That's right. I was hitting Terry and Jordan over the head with how my kid is huge and he's tall and he's going to do this and that and he's going to play soccer, all these things. No. Who knows? He's probably going to hate sports and not do anything at all with betting DFS. He'll play an instrument and he'll travel and he'll do all that and we'll be happy. And who cares, right?
I love science and math.
As long as he's happy,
you'll have nothing to talk about.
Exactly. He'll be smarter than me. He already is. So there's no doubt there.
So if he is a sports kid, what kind of a sports, since we've got a little time, what kind of a sports dad do you see yourself being? Do you see yourself being calm and reserved on the sidelines? Are you a coach? Are you going to get in there and be like an assistant coach, volunteer? Are you going to be a lunatic parent, like screaming at the umpires and charging the field? Like what's your parenting style?
Okay. So I had a friend in high school, and he was a good kid and I enjoyed our friendship, but he had one of those over the top dads who was not like, look, he was super hard on his own kid, but he was also, to be fair, he was also like a really vocal dad on, like propping us up and slapping hands on the way to the locker room. Like he was really involved, but even on those good things, the one thing that does stand out even now, 20 plus years later, is how awkward it was, him just yelling and screaming, God damn, whatever the hell it was, yelling at his own kid. So I will not be the dad who yells and does any of that on the sideline. I'll cheer, but I'm not going to boo. I'm not. And like, this is going to be against every single grain of my existence, Terry, but I will not be in the stands saying that was horse shit or anything like that. Like, I'm not yelling at the refs. I'm not chasing the refs down. I'm not doing any of that. And Jordan Klein, I say that now.
The umpire, kick some dirt on him.
No, I've seen it. Like, we've all played sports in some level, in some capacity. And a lot of times you see this stuff. The ugliness happens in Little League, in Babe Ruth, in Pop Warner. I'm not. Like, I know for a fact, everybody says, oh, I'm not going to be my parent. I'm not going to. No. I will not be that dad. I promise you. I'm probably just going to be, honestly, like the type of dad I'll be is I'll let him do everything. Go out there, go play your game, be with your buddies, be with your teammates. And then after, win or lose, I'll try and talk about it. Try and have a conversation about the game. I'm not going to sit him down and watch film. This is not going to be Kyler Murray, but that's what I'll have.
He just hops in the car. First thing you say is, so tell me what you did wrong out there, regardless win or lose.
Yep.
I like that. That's the move.
No, I'm telling you, man, I cannot be a guitar man. I'll have a retractable backdrop and a megaphone. Can you imagine? I pull up with a step and repeat and just start doing a show with a mic. I can't believe it. He's over here. No.
I think that's the move, really. You just say, you get there, you show up with a color man, you do the whole thing.
Now, I agree that would be the over the top nonsense. But look at this how about this? Brian, Underwood. I ran down the field with my son when he scored a touchdown. Now that is something I can subscribe to. So, but again,
as long as you're on the correct part of the sideline,
exactly,
the correct side of the sideline. Yeah,
I'm not stepping over. I'm not going to be where the coaches are.
Not throwing blocks.
Right, yeah. And yes, Leibowitz.
My son was at the 15, and a guy was about to get him, so I ran out there and cracked the guy. And my son scored.
I love it, man. I love it. All right. We're at a good spot right now. We'll tell people again here, but this 50% off Stokastic Plus is happening. It's happening right now. You're already a part of what's going on with the Stokastic Plus tools, the content for everything we have across the board for DFS. So get out there with the Stokastic Plus Platinum Pass. Now that includes full access to everything premium, right? All the things you'll find on stokastic.com. If you're a new Stokastic Plus user, we'll give you 50% off any Stokastic Plus pass. That's like 50% off, half off. Use our promo code. You see it there. It's all one word, MLB Live, name of the show, but 50% off your first week of Stokastic Plus Platinum. And what we see a lot of times, Terry, is people really taking advantage of the site right away. So you may be here for baseball. You may be here for one or maybe two specific sports, but when you get half off your first week, we see people take advantage of tennis, of NASCAR, of all the different things available to you. And next thing you know, you start playing all these other sports because you realize that we have all these projections that are going to make you money. And now your membership is paying off exponentially once that 50% is done. So it's a really cool way to pound that first week, getting half off and taking advantage of the site.
And especially with everything that's, coming down the pipe, with everything we've got going on, there's a NASCAR race later today. I know that I was thinking about maybe grabbing some of our projections and jumping into, even though I know Nothing at all about NASCAR. The only thing I know about racing is that rubbing is racing. I know that expression for some reason. That's in my head. It's the only thing I know about car racing other than Dale Earnhardt race cars. But yeah, with
sure
everything at the
that
site,
on a film. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sure it's from something. I'm sure it's from something.
No, it was
Days
a
of
bad
Thunder,
joke. It was a
probably.
linguist joke. I apologize.
Oh, all right. Missed it. But yeah, I mean, it's not even a sales pitch. Like, it's not like you're going to sign up to the site and somebody's going to be like, yeah, shoving you in like, hey, play PGA, play NASCAR, play. It's just all there for you. So you can jump into these things and you can try it out. If you find success, you can start rolling things up pretty nicely. And with football coming soon and just with everything, NBA starting up in NHL in the fall, I mean, there's a lot of good reasons to jump on that platinum.
Love it, man. All right, let's keep it moving here. And again, we're not asking much, right? You can hit the thumbs up button. You should be subscribed to the Odd Shopper channel as well here. Ooh, got a nice ladder that I'm going to hit you with a little bit later. But all right, so we move on and we go from Detroit to Minnesota, Toronto in the house. And looking at this total, 8.5, going to be interesting to see how you break down the pitching matchup here, because from one hand, with Toronto, Kevin Gausman is like that third guy who is kind of in the middle between Burns, Nola, and the rest of the field. So he's gaining ownership, he's gaining traction, he's losing leverage. And then on the other side is Chris Archer, who, I mean, this has got to be just a really bad spot for him.
Yeah, definitely bad spot for Archer. I mean, it's a guy we've seen have success in the majors in the past, but he just hasn't had much this year. 19.6% strikeout rate, a 12.7% walk rate, a 4.89 xFIP. He's managed to keep the ball in the yard to a reasonable degree, but he's not even as good as his ERA would make some people think. 4.05 ERA, maybe some casuals will be chasing that for 6,200 on DK. It's just not for me, particularly not against a lineup like this Blue Jays lineup. There's a few lethal bats in that lineup. So the Gausman side of it, I do think is interesting. I like him better for 10.5 and 5.9% ownership on the FanDuel slate than I do for 9,224% ownership on the DK slate. Even though those ownership marks come out not even, but it's not as askew as it might seem. I just think that getting away from that much of the field on the FanDuel side has a little bit more advantage, where you are going to be walking hand in hand with a decent amount of the DK side as the third most popular DK pitcher. But I do love the spot. 28.4% strikeout rate for Gausman here, 2.74 xFIP. He's been great. 3.06 ERA. I questioned his decision to come back to the AL East, and he's been pitching dynamite all season long. So no reason not to target him here. There are some strikeouts to be had in this Twins lineup. That said, this is another spot where I think you can take some hedge stacks. You could take some insurance with this Twins team. They're good enough that they could get to Gausman. I don't think it's likely, but it's within the realm of possibility. It's within the range of outcomes.
Do you have a number that you're looking at as far as capping Gausman on DK? I had him 27.3, just running it right back, 27.2. So, by the way, Nola's ownership has dropped.
Okay. What are we talking about on Nola now? Let me do.
I mean, it's 59.2, but that's 4 percentage points for a guy. And I guess Cutter Crawford has gained. And I know the strikeout rate for Crawford is like eyes open. I just don't.
That's another spot about him.
Like, right? Yeah, we'll talk about him coming up. But
yeah, so with Gausman, for him, I wouldn't mind hitting around that. Like if I'm playing a full DK slate, that 25, 27%, somewhere in that neighborhood, I wouldn't mind being there. It's technically negative leverage, but it's a lot thinner. It's negative 5.5 versus negative 20 plus for the top two guys we were talking about before. And if I'm taking some shares out of those guys, I can afford to be at the field on Gausman, who I do think, on general stuff and on the upside is probably your third best option. So where it's basically efficient, I can be with the field there, draw some shares for the other guys from the top two pitchers, still have a lot of them, and then spread some of those shares that I took from the Burns, from the Nola, down to Montas, Wainwright, Crawford, Luzardo, Rasmussen, and probably stop there.
Okay. Fair enough. I don't think there's anything more there with that, because on the other side, we're not doing much. Now, the bats, it's really just a matter, I think, of if you're getting to Gausman at all with Minnesota, knowing that Toronto, I mean, just getting to Chris Archer is basically being screamed at you with our projections. They are like Tampa, getting some positive leverage against a pitcher that they should hammer.
Yeah, absolutely. They rank out fairly well in my home run model. They're sitting 5th overall, but their top 6 in their lineup is sitting 3rd overall. So they jump a little bit in the top end of that lineup. Lourdes Gurriel, Vladdy Guerrero, Alejandro Kirk hitting 3rd, Teoscar Hernandez hitting 4th. Still no George Springer. He's on the IL now, but it's still a lethal lineup. I talked about Matt Chapman yesterday. He goes into every slate just way too low owned for a guy with 20 plus home runs, a 229 ISO, creating runs 18% better than average. He's sitting 6th today. I can absolutely stack this team from 1 through 6. And I don't mind grabbing some shares of Kevin Biggio hitting 9th. I don't mind grabbing shares of Tapia and Espinal in the 7 and 8 spot. Espinal probably my least favorite bat on the team, but he's had a nice year himself. Not a crazy standout year, but 263, 314, 381, 7 home runs, 5 stolen bases. He's been productive for the pricing and for the popularity. When this lineup goes off, those guys tend to be involved a little bit. So I don't mind this team basically 1 through 9 going up against a pitcher that I mentioned the walk rate. He's going to be putting guys on. He's going to give up a little bit of pop. So with this team, yeah, I'm happy to go to get aggressive about the stack.
Awesome. Anything else here on this game that is worth a mention?
I just mentioned before, maybe grab some shares of the Twins if you're getting carried away with Gausman stacks. Just a couple little minor hedge stacks. They're all very low owned, but it would be around the Polanco, Kepler, Miranda section of the lineup. It's not the best version of this lineup, but you can get to at least the top end there. Maybe don't sleep on Gary Sanchez if you need a 9 hitter, if you need a cheap catcher with a little bit of power. So not the best Twins lineup out there, but maybe you grab a couple of hedge shares against Gausman ownership.
All right, everybody wants to talk Cutter here. I saw the chat is just blowing them up, and rightfully so. We'll have a little bit of a conversation, I imagine. But your question to me got me thinking in Terry McBride terms, which would be, and I'm not going to ask number 1. We always give you some leeway here to work with. So look at it in levels of list. It could be top 3, it could be Mount Rushmore, it could be top 5, it could be top 10. Those are usually the typical framework to work with. So let's say top 5. No, you know what? Mount Rushmore. Let's do that. Give me your Mount Rushmore of dads in a sports movie. And before you even answer, Guitar Man 247 opens up an interesting conversation about, well, he's not the dad, so get him out of here. All right. Now that I look through this, but that's the question. All right. Give me your Mount Rushmore of dads in a sports movie. And it doesn't matter. They don't have to be Wally Beaver. Like, they can be horrific they can be bad people. Okay. That's fine. That's fine.
Like Kelly Leak's deadbeat dad in Bad News Bears and Breaking Training, who ends up coaching the team when they go to the Astrodome.
Yes.
He'd be on that list.
Okay. Now you don't have to give them all. You can just give us one and sprinkle throughout.
Okay. That's number 1. He's not necessarily like number 1 ranking wise, but he's on that list of all.
There's no real hierarchy on the president, the faces on Mount Rushmore. I mean, people have their individual ones. Don't get me wrong, but it's just meant. That's what the beauty of the Mount Rushmore is that it's not 1 through 4. It's just all of them.
Yeah, they're just up there, and I don't think left to right matters. I don't think maybe if we start stacking them, maybe if they start
no stacks.
Like some people want.
No, we don't. Alex doesn't have a tool for that. I promise. All right. Okay, here we go. Nice. Minnesota, Toronto in the books. Let's get to Cutter Crawford. I mean, this is all about Cutter right here. The K rate is through the roof. We know that. I've played him earlier. I'll tell you what the play is specifically. My big concern, though, was just how long he's going to be in this game, Terry.
So, I mean, 53 2/3 and for the course of the season, 7 starts at this point. I think he's going to be out there a decent amount. I can pull up his pitch counts in the last few games. I hadn't checked those out recently, but let me take a look here.
Uh-oh. Now we're looking at last, how many?
It's been a while since I checked his pitch counts.
Oh, okay.
Clicked on the wrong one here. So yeah, since you asked, how long he's going to be in there, he's been 94 the last game. It was 69, 77, 2 starts before that at the end of July, but he had 94 in the last game. So I assume if he's going well, there shouldn't be any, over real concern. Maybe he doesn't hit you that quality start on the FanDuel slate, comes out after 5, but I think there's enough strikeout upside here that he could definitely have a good game for the money. So I like this spot a lot, and I don't think he's getting nearly enough ownership.
Yeah, and
or at least as the last time I updated. Let me see.
No, and you're right, and I don't know what Kansas City. I mean, we had him at 12.3 last that I projected here, at least on DraftKings, right? How much does it change on
12?
FanDuel?
Yeah, 12 and change on DK. He's only 1.2% owned on FanDuel. So, like I said, you might be running the risk that he doesn't get you that quality start on the FanDuel slate. But for the price, for the potential upside, I could see a 30 and change FanDuel start here, which could be enough. You never know. So, I think I could easily get above a 1 and change ownership on the FanDuel side.
Yeah, how much of a reach? And I'm asking, how much of a reach do you think it is that he has a better performance? And look, you're already in a good spot because you're saving somewhere around, $1,600+ getting to him as a P2 over the other guys I'm mentioning, who we will talk about in one case in the same game. You already mentioned Gausman. I'm taking Nola and Burns out of the equation here, right?
Sure.
Gausman's numbers, at least ownership, has dipped, I think, a little bit. So you've got Gausman, Montas, Wainwright, and Crawford. The question is, it's not even a matter of what you're saving, but that's compounded into the answer of how likely it is that Crawford's going to outperform Wainwright, Montas, and Gausman. And I think so far, especially because of the K rate, what you mentioned on the matchup, stands a pretty good chance of at least Gausman that we talked about. And then the other two are somebody that you're going to lay out in that other game.
And out of all 4 of those guys, he's got easily the best matchup going up against this Royals team. There are a couple power bats that I like in there, but they're not drawing massive home run projections. There are some strikeouts in this lineup now. They had been for a while, one of those teams that you consider as, not a high strikeout team. This season against right-handed pitching, 23.6% strikeout rate. That's 24th out of 30 teams in the league. So there's reason to believe in the strikeout upside for Cutter Crawford here. I could easily see him outperforming a Montas against the Cardinals, a Wainwright against the Yankees on the other side of that game. One that I'd be, maybe concerned with given his strikeout acumen would be Jesus Luzardo against the Cubbies, but you do have a similar or even more aggravated innings concern with Luzardo. He's only made 1 start back from injury. He pitched 81, I think, pitches, 5 innings. So there's more concern there. There's probably more upside in terms of the strikeouts, but I would probably lean toward the Crawford side in terms of like the reliability of delivering an interesting performance here.
Okay. And I think on the other side of it is, by the way, I don't know. I guess the dancing element makes Dirty Dancing a sports movie for EMAC. That's Jerry Orbach, right? Isn't Dr. House Jerry Orbach?
Yep. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Put some respect on that man's name.
And nobody puts EMAC in a corner, all right?
No, except for Orbach, all right? And you want to see one of the best on-screen performances from Orbach, and they always come in small sample sizes on Law and Order, is Orbach's first appearance with Chris Noth. All right. Okay. I believe it's Orbach because Noth was already there. So I believe it's Orbach's first appearance on Law and Order, and they're investigating a crime outside. And one of the guys, one of the cops has, like donuts or something. And he's mentioning Orbach is basically chastising one of the uniform guys for eating a donut and missing something. And Noth points at him and is like, it's not always about cops and donuts and stuff. And then Orbach looks back and says, it is when there's powder on the baby blues. I mean, beautiful.
Actually, as soon as you delivered the line, I heard the cue in my head before you did the music cue.
I'm telling you, man.
I knew that's what.
I'm sure I massicured the verbatim of it, but
no, that was a perfect retelling.
Jordan Turbo. This dude always goes off topic. I'm sorry. I maybe he's talking about Terry. Terry goes off topic.
Yeah, constantly.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got weather concerns, but not in this game.
Otherwise, this would just be me talking on these channels for 24 hours about God knows what.
Yeah, you wouldn't hate that though, to be fair.
No, I'd be here. Nothing else to do. I'll be around. You guys want to chat?
You could do. Yes.
Hit me up.
I'm telling you, between you and me, individually, collectively, we could do this from a phone booth for 24 hours to raise money. People could drop pennies off, and we could raise, 100 million pennies.
We should do that, a marathon day where we do 24 hours of programming talking about.
Well, it's easy now from the confines of our own home, right? You used to have to show up somewhere.
Right. Yeah, that's true. You have to go out to wherever the Jerry Lewis telethon was being held. Yes.
All right. Let's looking at anything else on the Kansas City side. And here's the thing. It's not like Crawford is gaining the type of ownership that Burns and Nola are, to the point where you can make an argument just to counter. So I don't know if there's enough at all in the Kansas City lineup, especially for you personally, since you're getting to so much Crawford.
I tell you what, I do like some of the bats there. I think this is a team that we're going to turn around in 2 years and be like, damn, Kansas City got pretty good, pretty fast. There are some nice bats. I threw Nick Prado out yesterday and he rewarded me, hit a walk-off home run. So he's nice little deal there.
Nice.
He's still only $2,000 on the DK slate, 4.1% ownership, 2,300 on FanDuel. So you can get to him. You can get to MJ. No Pasquantino in the lineup today, but you still got Sal in there. You still got Bobby Witt in there. So I think there's some bats. It's not a spot where I'm getting aggressive about it. I would probably look to be below where the field is actually on the DK side. They're a little popular on DK, and Bobby Witt's drawing a lot of ownership on both sites, 16% on both sites. So maybe given the popularity, I might not have that much of it, but I do think those are at least grabbable bats there.
Okay. And I mean, the other side, of course, we talked about with Boston here, so we can move to Milwaukee.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm asking you.
No, we didn't talk about the Red Sox bats.
Oh, okay. I got lost in our in one of the
I got lost
derailments.
because I was trying to move some stuff from one thing to another, and I thought you were going to do a transition.
Okay, see, that's good. That's why I asked, because look, I mean, yeah, exactly. We did not talk about Boston because they're going up against and probably have arguably on the board, right, the best matchup. Brad Keller is as bad as his numbers are. So this should be a smash situation for Boston.
Yeah, one of the more targetable stacks on the board for sure. They rank out pretty well in terms of the sites tools. I'm not getting the biggest home run marks on them in my model. Keller, not the guy who gives up a ton of home runs, but you can absolutely sequence against Brad Keller. He gives up a ton of contact, only a 15% strikeout rate over 113 innings. So no reason to not believe in the Red Sox here. And it's really, you know, in terms of ownership, it's really only Devers and Bogarts in the middle of the lineup. And then on DK for the minimum price, Christian Arroyo down in the 7 spot is drawing a little bit of attention. On FanDuel, it's only Devers and Bogarts. Everybody else, pretty low owned, relatively affordable. So to put with the 2 popular guys, grab some Tommy Pham, some Alex Verdugo, some JD Martinez, even some shares of Eric Hosmer. He's very low owned, very affordable on both sites. He's a capable bat. You know, he's not the biggest home run hitter. He's not the most productive DFS guy, but in this lineup, hitting behind those guys, hitting 6th in this batting order at 2% ownership for 3,300 on the DK slate, cheaper than that lower owned on FanDuel. That's a capable guy, 106 WRC plus this season, 8 home runs, can put the ball in play reliably. So against a pitcher like Keller, I wouldn't mind getting to some shares of Eric Hosmer and stacks here. And Jarren Duran's actually popular too. I missed him down hitting 9th, drawing about 17% ownership for $3,000 on the DK slate. That might actually be a remnant from when we thought he was hitting in the top. I need to update this ownership. So don't quote me on that ownership number, but he might be a little too popular, but interesting bat hitting 9th.
Okay. And we'll move. By the way, I wanted to bring back, I mentioned I had that 5-leg here, round robin for you. Nola 6Ks, Phillies win, Rasmussen 4Ks, Tampa to win. I missed one. It was Gausman 5Ks, Toronto to win. Now that's at -120. So I recognize that I'm taking a little bit, but still, I mean, I'm not betting anything on Chris Archer.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I'm comfy with the against Chris Archer side of that one.
The 5Ks.
Gausman, 5Ks, I've got him over, but I've got him the way my model works. It's the implied is 5.6, and then the projected is 5.9. So
okay,
that one's the thinnest of the pitching ones so far. But you're there.
Okay, we're there. I understand. We'll move to Milwaukee. A reminder here, you haven't already. Thanks to Charles Moran and others for reminding you in the chat to hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed here. Nearly 800, probably over that by the time I'm done reminding you that. So just keep the ratio as tight as we can here. We appreciate you hanging with us. We know that you have a lot to do on Sunday, especially once lineups lock. So thank you by all means. And really all we're asking in return is the thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe as well. We'll tell you again about the half off the first week before we get out of here. By all means, Stokastic plus Platinum. So let's go to Milwaukee and talked about Washington as being that ridiculously long shot on the road, Cincinnati, and a lot of this has to do, if not all of it, having to do with Corbin Burns. So much like we did with Nola, let's start there. And just to kind of update where we are on Burns ownership, where we have projected, 66.7. That hasn't moved on DK. You're losing a ton of leverage. I imagine you're going to treat this, though, similarly as we spoke about with Nola.
Yeah, I think they're very much the same spot, the same pitcher today, where you can just kind of look at it like that, where you're just you shave off, like I talked about earlier, a little bit off the top of Corbin Burnes, who I think is, probably your best bet, 32.3% strikeout rate this season, a 2.89 xFIP. This guy's a Cy Young winner. I mean, there are good reasons to go to a ton of Corbin Burnes here, but 66% is aggressive. There are other good spots that are very low owned, that are cheaper, that you get you access to different bats, that if that much of the field is going to be on Burnes and Nola, and then the third highest owned pitcher is Kevin Gausman, who is also not cheap, that means the field is going to be leaving a lot of interesting, expensive stack combinations on the table. And I think there's a lot of justification for just undercut some of the ownership on the top two pitchers, the most expensive guys. They're your top targets. They can still be your top two owned guys. Yep. Just take 10% off the top of each one, 15% off the top of each one, and give it to the Luzardos, Wainwrights, Rasmussens, and so on of the world. And I think you get a little bit more spread out. You cover more of the field, and you get to combinations that a lot of people won't have.
Is there anything at all that you can do? I mean, look, Graham Ashcraft is just somebody I don't want any part of. This is not even like the Lodolo type scenario where maybe you can get 9-10 Ks in an outing that gives up 4 or 5 runs. The price tag on DK, I think, is enough alone. And then you add the matchup. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, which is certainly possible, Terry. But I think at 8,900, Ashcraft is a stay away from me.
Yeah, I honestly don't even know why he's 8,900, to be honest.
Okay, thank you. I feel better now.
Yeah, 3.95 xFIP is good. He's a kid who I think there is maybe a little talent in that arm, but over 74 in a third inning so far, a 15.1% strikeout rate. You're not getting a lot of DFS upside from this kid right now, so I'm not seeing it. Doesn't look like the field's really seeing it at that price. And then on the FanDuel slate, I think there's just way too much on the single pitcher site to go there. So I am interested in getting some Brewers bats on the other side against him. He's pushing through a pretty good home run number, at least for the top 4 Brewers bats. And then it kind of falls off around the back end of that lineup, but he's not given up a tremendous home run rate this year, only 2.16%, reasonable hard hit rate, reasonable barrel rate. So I'm not exactly sure where that's coming from, but I trust my model enough that I will have a decent share of the Brewers, at least top 6, top 7. I like Luis Urias down there too.
And the Brewers bats are, and I get it, that cost is going to be a factor here more so than anything else. But I thought that with some decent options for P2s on the slate for DK at least, and knowing that you've got a matchup against a guy like Ashcraft, this would be an opportunity to get to more Milwaukee overall from the field. And it's really not that. And I imagine that just cost is going to be the biggest deterrent here, because it certainly is not going up against Graham Ashcraft.
Yeah, it's definitely not the matchup, but you do make a good point there. The top 4 hitters who I mentioned are drawing most of those power numbers. Average salary on DK is $53.25. So you're talking about 4 expensive bats. It falls off $4,400 Colton Wong, $3,600 Keston Ura is interesting, $4,100 Luis Urias is interesting. So maybe you weave those guys in and out with 2 or 3 of the top end guys and build out some stacks that way. On FanDuel, they're more affordable. Everybody under 4,000 comfortably. Everybody in the single digits in terms of ownership. So I like it a lot on both sites. It's just easier to pay for on the FanDuel slate, but I think they're worth getting to in this spot, particularly given how low owned they are.
Anything, and again, this is just to bring it up. We had to bring it up with Nola, and it's even more, I think, of a ridiculous act, probably just burning your money here. But in the event that Corbin Burnes doesn't work out, now you really are getting 2/3 of the field wiped out on DK and a significant amount on FanDuel as well.
Yeah, it's just another spot where it's very much like what I said with the Nats, where it's just like we're talking about a really bad lineup. It's a really bad team. There's Joey Votto still lurking in the middle of that lineup. If you want to, remember the good old days, he's still got a 108 WRC plus this year. He's hit 11 home runs, but he's not the Joey Votto of old. Mike Moustakas, definitely not the Mike Moustakas of old. Not a lot to love there. Nick Senzel, somebody mentioned earlier, he's cheap, 2,200 on the DK slate, same price on FanDuel. Nobody's going to it, but against Corbin Burnes, possibly the best pitcher in the league, premium strikeout pitcher, not going to allow a ton of contact, certainly not going to allow a ton of premium contact. I just don't see it. It would be very limited shares if I was doing it at all, and I'm probably not going to have any.
Freudian slip. Graham Ashcroft sleeper. See, there's the slip. Croft, not Kraft. You're thinking of
I got lost.
No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. All right. Jorge, nice super chat here. If your live depends on that, if your life depends on that, which top 2-3 teams would you stack a lot on multiple lineups on DK? Look, if this were a betting show, I would immediately think that you've lost like 50 bets and you're trying to get it all back on one. So hopefully that's not the case here with your slates, Jorge. No, we got you, Jorge. We appreciate this. First off, we appreciate the super chat. Definitely not necessary, but always thankful. So beyond all that, appreciate you, brother. Terry will let
absolutely.
you know.
Thanks for sending that over. Always appreciate the questions. It keeps the show, going. It keeps us from just like, all right, what do you think of this team? What do you think of this team? So it's always good to get those in, whether they're paid for or not, but we appreciate the super chats. If I'm stacking gun to my head, I really like the Phillies up at the top. I talked about what they're doing through the top of my power index. We just talked through the Brewers top end. So if you can grab that and you're not worried about ownership or anything like that, or actually they're fairly low. And excuse me, if you're not worried about cost, you can definitely go to that. So in a vacuum, Phillies Brewers would probably be my top two. And then I mentioned the White Sox earlier, but they don't rate out nearly as well on the sites tools. So I'm a little concerned about throwing that into the gun to my head mix. I might go with a lineup that rates, I think, a little bit better in the sites tools in Toronto that also rates out fairly well in my power index here. And like I said, the top 6 in Toronto jumps a couple spots in that index. So maybe I'm looking top end of the Blue Jays and Brewers would be my 3.
Okay. Appreciate it again, Jorge.
And that's all, in a vacuum, salary and ownership.
Absolutely.
Not relevant. Yeah.
I saw this here. Step Hortless asking you a question about high dollar SCGPP on FanDuel. Did you see that one? It just popped in. It popped up earlier.
Not.
So
I didn't. I haven't had much of time to have the chat up as I'm trying to fix some lineups here.
All right. Well,
what was the question?
Well, you fix your lineups and we'll get back to that.
I'm happy to answer the question while we do it. I just didn't look at it.
Keston and Burns or Nola and Lowe?
Ooh, if ownership is a concern, then I would go to the Hira and Burns side of it. Okay. If ownership's not a concern, then I would probably take assuming that's Brandon Lau that we're talking about.
Yeah, Lau, pardon me.
Low. Yeah. Well, I mean, it could mean Nate Lau or Nate Lowe.
Yeah, you're right.
Excuse me, or Josh Lowe or any one of these Lowe's Laus or whatever. But assuming we're talking about that, Brandon Lau, I prefer him to Hira, but ownership is a massive difference. Lau is in the 20s and Hira's in the low single digits. So there's a big ownership question there.
Okay. Appreciate the questions as always. Doesn't need to be the super chat, but definitely not necessary. We moved to St. Louis, and this is a big day for Terry McBride because he gets to see Frankie Montas come off the bereavement list and make his Yankees debut. And I mean, I have to be honest because the Phillies, I guess, made a couple of moves, Syndergaard, et cetera. There were Juan Soto. There were some big ones here. This one flew under the radar. I don't know why it did. It probably didn't up there. But I think overall, just with the day and leading up to the trade deadline, the fact that the Yankees got Frankie Montas out of Oakland and in this rotation, losing Montgomery, that doesn't matter. This was a huge move for New York. Does it pay off today is the big question.
Let's hope so. I do like the move. I think it was a move they needed to make. I like the move. Yeah. I was hoping for Luis Castillo. I was hoping for Pablo Lopez, maybe instead of Frankie Montas, but I'll take what we got. Yeah. I'm content with that. I can also very clearly see a path to a lot of stories in the New York Post about how we should have gone and paid the price for those guys instead of getting Frankie Montas because of this clunker that he delivered against the St. Louis Cardinals, which will be unfair tomorrow because it's the St. Louis Cardinals and they're a very, very good lineup. I do want to get to some shares of Frankie Montas. I think he's under owned 9,900, 1% ownership on FanDuel. He's a better pitcher than that. There's a lot of good reasons to go to Frankie Montas, even with the brutal matchup here. 25% strikeout rate on the season. He's only 8,700 on DK. The price makes him more appealing over there. He's 8% owned, so it's similarly low ownership. I really like the spot on DK there. I'm wary, but I'm optimistic about Frankie Montas here. He projects middle of the road for me.
Yeah, I mean, the other side of it is Wainwright, and you're looking at a similar number as far as cost. DK, Alex having a similar projection. I mean, they're pretty much there. You may find a little difference as far as ownership is concerned. The numbers are probably not going to jump off the page for Adam Wainwright, but the ERA is kind of hard to ignore. So maybe there is a pathway here to just keeping this Yankees lineup somewhat in check to benefit you. I don't know if the 8,400 tag might be too much worth the risk, but this also might be a case in which the DFS side just doesn't meet the real world ending.
Yeah, and that tends to be the case a lot of the time with Waino. Better at this point in his career anyway, probably a better real life pitcher than a DFS pitcher. But we've all seen those slates where he goes out and has those big games and those throwback games, finds some strikeouts. At this low ownership, these kind of prices, similar to Montas, I'm happy to take a few shots with him. It's easy enough to get at or above the field. He projects out like two FanDuel points better than Montas for me. Not the greatest version of the Yankees lineup on the other side. It's not bad by any means, especially 1 through 6. But the Hicks, he's been struggling mightily in August, and he has hot months and cold months, it seems, and he's just not looking very good right now. And then Jose Trevino and Marwin Gonzalez rounding out the bottom of the order. Not a lot to fear in the bottom third. So I could see Waino putting up a good start here. It's just, how much do I want to go tangle with the Yankees when I can grab some shares of Drew Rasmussen against Detroit, when I can grab some shares of Cutter Crawford against Kansas City? So I'll have a little bit, but I don't know how much I want to mess around with the Yanks.
What about, okay, so the stack option here is, does either really jump out, knowing from really a cost standpoint, I guess, first and foremost?
The Yankees are not all that expensive when you're not talking about Aaron Judge. On FanDuel, they're all very cheap. DK, they're fairly cheap. Josh Donaldson has struggled through a lot of this season. He's got 10 home runs on the year, a 163 ISO, and 97 WRC plus. But he's a guy who can always turn on the ball. He's hitting cleanup for no ownership, very low cost. Gleyber Torres hitting 5th, Benintendi hitting 6th. There's a lot of reasons to consider some of those Yankees up at the top end of the lineup. I would probably cut it off around the Benintendi part, play some top 6 stacks. I don't think I want to get too carried away with it, but this is the team I would probably look to stack more Yankees than Cardinals, just given the difference in strikeout rate. Montas is likely to allow a little bit less contact, and both of these pitchers are similar in terms of their other numbers. 36.8% hard hit for Montas, 36.5 for Waino, 8.4% barrel rate for Montas, 8.0 for Waino, 2.45% home run rate for Waino, 2.84 for Montas. Flip them on the last one there. So I see these pitchers fairly similarly. I see the stacks favoring the Yankees a little bit. Cards are a great lineup. They're super low on the other side of this one. You can go there, but I think given the potential for a lack of contact, I prefer the Yankee side.
Yeah, and Alex hasn't projected the highest leverage stack on the board. Now, some of that is mitigated by the other teams and who they're going up against, an easier matchup than Wainwright by all means. But to your point, there is a lot of opportunity based on how you spend your money and build your lineups here to get to the Yankees in prime, sub, down to one-offs, especially if you're working around a higher cost guy or two in this line. You're still gaining leverage to the field. So I dare I even say a sneak spot for a team that doesn't fly under the radar at all.
Yeah, and we've talked about these spots all year long. There's a lot of situations where I have nothing but respect for Adam Wainwright as a pitcher. I don't necessarily think the Yanks are likely to go out there and totally blow them up. Maybe they win like a 5-4 ball game, something like that. But on the off chance that the Yankees do light him up or get into this bullpen and light them up, I want to be a part of that situation when the Yanks are, 1% owned across the board outside of Aaron Judge, who's only 10%. Aaron Judge hits a home run every day and he's 10% owned. I'm happy to get to that even with the salary. So yeah, the Yanks are firmly on that list with the Astros and the Dodgers, and probably at this point, the Padres, and on the other side, the Cards even, of teams that when they're this low owned, I'm happy to have some shares and get over the field regardless, almost regardless of who's on the mound. If they were going up against a Corbin Burns, I'd have a little bit more concern. Against a guy like Waino, who strikes out 20% of hitters, I can take some shots at that. I think there's upside there.
So this next game here, we've got 2 left, and I'm sure Terry he's alluded to throughout, is going to hit you with a home run play or two before lock in the next 10 minutes. But this next game, I don't think it has much of a chance. And we are all amateur meteorologists on this show here, but it doesn't look like this has much of a shot with the rain impending there. But with that, I don't know. That's just what I was. Look, I'm not anywhere near Chicago. I'm just looking at the maps and all. So we'll talk about it though. As far as it's going, it's a go here. Total of 9. I do have another one here as far as a K and team to win, but I'll save that at the end. Let's just look, and we talked about Luzardo, second start now, right, coming off the IL. That there is going to be some cost here, but that K rate is pretty hard to ignore, Terry.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I really love Luzardo as a pitcher. He was a premium prospect coming up. He's delivered it at every stop in the majors so far. It's just he's been, up and down a little bit with injury. Came back, like I mentioned before, 5 days ago and pitched about 5 innings, 80 some odd pitches. Tremendous upside potential here. 33.3% strikeout rate in his 34 innings, going up against this Cubs lineup that is just, very low end. I can see a very good game, even if he only throws 5 innings. Yeah. You can see him putting up a very nice start here, finding a bunch of strikeouts. There's certainly potential for him to struggle. An 11.6% walk rate is something to be concerned about. Last year, it was an 11% walk rate, something to be concerned about. If he puts a couple guys on, somebody turns on one, it could end his day early, but I like that spot a lot. The rain is definitely a consideration now, though. So fortunately, this is a 2:20 start, one of our later starting games, so there'll be time to mess with it. Right now, it's in my lineups. I just pulled up the radar. It's looking not as good as it was before. The rain is lasting a little longer now, but it does look like it's going to clear up as of like 4 o'clock. Okay. So if they're willing to wait, and it's a Sunday game, I don't know if they're due to play one another, or is this matchup due to happen where they can easily reschedule this game late in the season? I'm not sure. So might be one where they wait and look to get it in, but at least we've got a little time to play with it. If this game plays, I love the spot for Luzardo.
All right. Now, the other side is kind of twofold here, where we can look at where we have on site, at least, how Alex has top stack score, which is different than top stack percentage, mind you. That's just an encapsulation of everything, is Miami. So if you're going to Sampson in any capacity, and to be fair, more people are going to Sampson than Keller, Manning, and Wilson combined. So you do have at least a blip on the radar, as low as it may be, just over 3% owned for a P2 on Sampson. Point being is that it's not an entire one side like we've talked about with Keller and Manning and others. I don't know if you're doing anything with Sampson, but Miami, as far as a stack, looks like a pretty good opportunity here, especially because of the value and the cost that you're saving.
Yeah, I think that Miami is a interesting target on this slate. They're drawing some frisky power numbers. A guy like Lewin Diaz hitting 5th is very highly ranked in my power index, oddly, today. Has not delivered anything at the major league level this season, but it's only 45 plate appearances, 19 AAA home runs so far this year. A guy with well-regarded power in his bat. So kind of sneaky, kind of interesting there. Well, not sneaky. He's drawing 13.9% on the DK slate now. So was a little sneakier earlier in the day. It's just a really weird lineup. I mean, tell me how many of these names you even recognize, from Joey Wendell, Lucas Williams, JJ Bleday, Nick Fortes, Lewin Diaz, Charles LeBlanc, who I think was the guy who drew Snoopy, Jacob Stallings, Peyton Burdick, Billy Hamilton. Everybody knows Billy Hamilton down in the 9 spot. It's just not a good lineup. This is like a AA team. So I don't love the spot in terms of the lineup, but I don't see a ton for Sampson. 17% strikeout rate, 4.33 xFIP. Not a good pitcher. I guess at 7,300 you can get away with it, but I'd just rather go to shares of Cutter Crawford for a much cheaper price.
Now I have, and this will tie back into what you think of anything at all with the Cubs stack, but my 4th leg here is Luzardo 5Ks, Miami to win. So I like Miami to win this game, despite it being a bunch of no names. And a lot of that is just taking on Sampson, more so than holding my breath with Luzardo. But even still, like, I can get 5Ks from Luzardo in 4 2/3 innings.
He might have 5Ks in the first 2 innings. I mean, he's that kind of a pitcher, right, and this is that kind of a low end lineup. So I could easily see that.
I just need Miami to win.
Yep. Sorry, I just screwed something up here.
Oh no.
Hopefully,
how much time? How, is that like I need to reload, or like
no, we're okay.
Fucked everything up.
No. I hit save instead of save as. We're okay.
Oh, okay. Much better.
Little concerning there with 5 minutes to go. So yeah, I could see Luzardo hitting that easily. And I think on the back of Luzardo holding down the Cubbies, and the fact that they're going up, the Marlins are going up against Sampson, and we're seeing some power in the numbers here. I had a lot of reasons to like that one as well.
Okay.
As like.
All right, last game, and it's on the FanDuel slate here. So we'll move FanDuel only as far as just looking at this White Sox Rangers game. Giolito And on the other side of it, Spencer Howard. Not much to really jump out. I mean, maybe there's something with Giolito that you could work around here. The cost at 8,500 is going to be somewhat of a departure from the top three guys, but look, you're spending $100 more than you would be for a guy in Cutter Crawford. So I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I think it does make sense.
Okay.
Giolito is too talented to be this low priced in general. I know he's not been as good as advertised, as good as he's been in the past this season, but his xFIP, if we're not looking at the ERA, and that's where people get hung up, 5.06 ERA looks bad. 3.53 ERA last year looks a lot better. He's got the exact same xFIP this year as he did last year, 3.75, 26.1% strikeout rate this year, 27.9% last year. If Lucas Giolito was 8,500 last year, people would have been going nuts for this spot. He's only pulling 10% ownership here. I like that spot a lot. I've gotten an aggressive share of Giolito.
Top three LeBlancs of all time. Matt from Friends, is that
he would have been on my list there? Yeah, there's probably some French regent
there has sometime, to be, right? And Mel Blanc doesn't count.
Mel Blanc doesn't count. Yeah,
no, it has to be LeBlanc.
That's the tough one. Yeah,
right.
I mean, the one that comes to mind is Wade LeBlanc, and I don't know if I want to go there.
That's fair. Yeah, look at that EMAC. See, it's almost like EMAC is feeding us these questions a la quiz show with Tuturo, right? But it's just like top three LeBlanc, because he had Matt, Mel, and Wade ready to go, but Mel doesn't really count.
Yeah, I think you need the "la" in front there.
Exactly.
Unless he's trying to go a little dyslexic on us and flip the last two letters of Mel and turn it around. I think EMAC's trying to get creative there.
Not even EMAC. He deserves benefit of the doubt when it comes to creativity, but not even that. I think. All right, we only have a couple.
That's too much. Somebody in the chat asked Giolito or Crawford in a vacuum. Giolito for me.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as far as Howard is concerned, I mean, this is bottom end here. You're not really gaining much at all with it. It's more just about the stacks here. So in the final couple of minutes, what are you doing with Texas and the White Sox?
I would have minor shares maybe of Texas. You can grab some shares against Giolito. He does have a 4.08% home run rate. So he's given up a little bit of power this season, 40.2% hard hit, 9.1% barrel there. But I do expect a good game from Giolito here. So I'd be tempering my expectations there. Have some, not a lot. The White Sox on the other side, definitely a spot I'm more interested in. No Tim Anderson in the lineup, but Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez, Jose Abreu, Andrew Vaughn, John Moncada. I like that portion of the lineup here. AJ Pollock leading off for only 2,300. He's pulling a little bit of popularity, but these guys are also smashing through the top of my power index. So they're another team I mentioned. The site was not seeing them quite as strongly as I am, but I think I'm going to have a decent look at the White Sox in these lineups when I take a look at what's actually in here in a couple minutes.
All right, before you give a couple of dong picks on the way out, I leave you with this, the last one on the leg here, where it's not on our slate. Tyler Anderson, 4Ks, Dodgers to win. That's at plus 140.
I don't have a projection for you, but I do think that's a good spot. I like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
now,
not bad.
Speaking of good spots, home runs, anything you got across the board. Derek Hall.
Derek Hall's number 4 on my home run model. I told you the Phillies are just absolutely smashing this
Love
thing.
it.
So yeah, that's an interesting one. Once again, for the third or fourth day in a row, Kyle Schwarber and Rhys Hoskins are 1-2 respectively. Love the spot for Kyle Schwarber. He's basically tripling up the magic number in the home run model here. And then if I'm making a pick, I'm going to, since it's projecting out well, Lewin Diaz sitting 5th in the model. I'll make that the wacky call. Hope that game plays in Chicago.
Awesome. That's Terry. I'm Eytan. Thank Jordan, most importantly, for sitting through all this. Thank you for hanging with us on this Sunday. We appreciate it. Thumbs up button, subscribe. You know the drill.
Rick Moranis and Ed O'Neill from Little Giants, both in that question. And then let's go with the dad who takes the football in the face in Varsity Blues as the last guy.
I was wondering where that wild card would be, that 4th and final pick.
Yeah, it was the first one I could think of. I'm sure there's probably a better pick from Hoosiers. Like what was
no,
what's his face in
yeah, I get it. Dennis Hopper.
Yeah.
No. That is beautiful. No, I love it. By the way, real quick, who are the Phillies that popped up?
The top 2 were Schwarber and Hoskins, but Schwarber, Hoskins, Castellanos, and Derek Hall are the top 4 in my home run model. Alec Boehm not too far behind. So all the Phillies. By
the way, if you play all 4 of those just to record one hit in the same game parlay, it's plus 283. There you go. Just a thought there. Just love that. All right. We appreciate you all hanging with us. We'll see you next week. I'm jumping in.